I would like to thank the San Marcos High School Air Force JROTC Color Guard and Major Mark McClough for presenting the colors today. You may have noticed, I hope that you noticed, that on the way in, we had a drum line to meet you. There are many things to celebrate about our beloved Dr. Kevin Holt. One of the many things is his love of dancing and how much he really enjoyed the drum line. And so we thought it was only fitting to honor him in that way when you entered today. So I would like to thank the San Marcos High School drum line led by band director Matt Armstrong for their contribution today. Also like to thank the students in the San Marcos High School Floral Design Program and their teacher Donna Silva for the flower soaks that are on the stage. That was their contribution for today. Also like to thank San Marcos High School Principal Adam Dawson. San Marcos High School has been a very gracious host, so obviously has Principal Dawson. And I wanted to tell you a story that I think really is Kevin in a nutshell. And we'll have a few stories for you this afternoon. But I called Principal Dawson a month ago, probably more, and shared with him the possibility of doing this event here, and shared that we thought today would be a good time to do this, October 19th. We mentioned that we were hopeful to conduct the school board meeting here later this evening in the theater, and then have this event here in the gym. He immediately checked the calendar and said, theater, no problem. Gym, that's a problem. We have a conflict there in terms of having the event. And I said, I'm sorry, Adam, why don't we think about some other dates? And that's when Adam stopped me and said, wait a second, this is for Kevin. And he let me know that the San Marcos High School girls volleyball head coach, Sherry Cluett, knew Kevin. And he was immediately confident that if he approached her and just asked about the possibility of rescheduling today's San Marcos High School girls volleyball game, he felt confident that she would be interested and probably willing. And I would say that no less than 24 hours later, the game was rescheduled. And excuse me, to me, that's there was just a different standard for Kevin. If it was for Kevin, there was just a different motivation, because he was so much of what San Marcos came to embody. So I do want to say thank you to Coach Sherry Cluett and the student athletes, their parents, for being so gracious and being willing to reschedule their game. I would like to introduce some individuals that have joined me on the stage. I'd like to begin by introducing Kevin's partner, Tom Harney. If you could just wave. Hi. Thank you. I'd like to next introduce Kevin's sister, Kathy Smith. I'd like to introduce Kevin's brother, Tracy Holt. I'd like to introduce Kevin's daughter, Mallory Chase, and her husband, Pete. I'd like to introduce Kevin's son, Taylor Holt, and his wife, Ira. I'd like to introduce Kevin's niece, Dr. Emily DeVore. I'd like to introduce San Marcos City Council member and former SMUSD board member, Randy Walton. I'd like to introduce the executive director of the San Marcos Promise, Lisa Stout. I'd like to introduce SMUSD Superintendent, Dr. Andy Johnson. And finally, I'd like to introduce Executive Assistant to the Superintendent, Dana Voros. Next, I would like to invite Superintendent Dr. Andy Johnson to come and say a few words.
Thank you, Henry. I also want to say thank you to Henry for putting this event together. It's a lot of details and a lot of time and a lot of thinking and planning and cajoling of other people to help support. So thank you, Henry. And I know, Dana, you supported as well. So thank you to you guys. I was asked to share a couple of very brief remembrances of Kevin, which I will do. I will say that honestly, I didn't work very closely with Kevin. In fact, I didn't work with him at all. My interactions with Kevin were very limited. So I knew him, when I came here to San Marcos Unified, I knew him only by reputation, and that reputation was stellar. And so I knew coming here I had pretty big shoes to fill. And it's only getting worse the more I see you, and I see here, I look around and I see all these faces I'm going to be hearing from you, I know, very shortly. But I did want to say that I did have the opportunity to have lunch with Kevin, a lunch meeting with him over the summer. After I was hired, I asked if he would be willing to meet with me. Of course he did. And I found out in about 5 minutes of talking to Kevin what I think many of you knew for years and years and years, which is that he was one of the most kind, thoughtful, down-to-earth, friendly guys you could ever hope to meet. We sat for lunch, and he gave me history on the district, a little bit of background, and I felt, well, as I say, almost immediately like we knew each other forever. He was very encouraging, and it was just a really, really good time. And it's a very special person who can make someone feel that way. I know that I walked away from that one lunch meeting thinking to myself, this is great. I've got a new friend. I potentially have a new mentor. I definitely will have him on the speed dial. And then of course we got the news not too long after that, and I felt a real loss. Only because that immediate impact that he was able to have on me. So I consider myself very blessed to have had that brief interaction with him. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing from all of you and from others of you about the interactions you had with him and how you knew him. But I'm very blessed to have had that short time with him. So thank you.
If you're here today, I'm sure that you know Kevin for many things. Certainly one of the things Kevin was very much known for was being an advocate for public education. He really devoted his career to that. And just as a slight background, I just wanted to walk you through his progression, career-wise, just briefly. Began his career as an elementary teacher in Long Beach in 1983 and became an elementary assistant principal in 1994. In 1996, he became an elementary principal in Norwalk, La Mirada. And then in 1999, moved to Temecula. And there he first served as an elementary principal and later as the director of human resources. I will pause there just for a moment to say that that's the first time I'd ever heard the name Kevin Holt. And it drove me crazy. And I have to tell you why. I became the director. I didn't replace Kevin. Kevin had been gone a few years by the time I got to Temecula. But as I visited school sites, certainly as I worked in human resources, I kept hearing about this Kevin Holt guy. Do you know him? Have you met him? Keep in mind, he'd been gone for years. He'd been gone for years by the time I got there, but I thought, oh man, I don't know if I could ever work with this guy or for this guy, because he's a legend in Temecula. Little did I know he was becoming a legend here. And so I almost felt a little professional jealousy because I thought, I could never be as good as this guy. I mean, he's been gone for years, and they still just want to know if I've met him. Have I seen him recently? Tell me anything about him. So Kevin was one of the individuals that you meet in life, and there's not a lot that you just don't forget. And that is one of many things that makes him very special. In 2003, to kind of continue with his journey, he transitioned to San Marcos to become assistant superintendent in human resources. And in 2006, he was named superintendent of this district, where he served with great distinction until his retirement in 2017. I think when all of us reflect on Kevin's tenure, whether it be in Temecula or in San Marcos, there are just so many stories that we all can recall, things that helped us understand that this was a person of distinction. This was a person of great success, but just great connection with others. And so, when I just reflect on just a few things that I remember about Kevin and so respected, I was in the district here as assistant superintendent, and I remember Kevin being asked by the County Office of Education to lead the Achievement Gap Task Force for San Diego County. And I thought, this is a large county. I think there's something like 42 districts. And to have the county office ask a superintendent to sort of lead that work as the county office itself, as the various districts here began to tackle this very, very important and meaningful work, to be asked to do that, that to me, I thought, that what a tremendous honor. And I remember just being so impressed that Kevin was asked to do the work. And I remember the planning that went into, I think they were monthly meetings, that so many other leaders in this county attended. Therefore, Kevin was leading the work of leaders. I also remember Proposition K, and I won't go into great detail on that. And I was not in this district when Proposition K was passed. I would say, though, from my perspective, Proposition K has been wildly successful. It's just been a tremendous blessing to this community. And many, many, many people are to receive gratitude for Proposition K passing. Certainly the citizens of this community that voted for Proposition K. And although so many people spent time after hours on weekends, because I heard these stories after I came, somehow it was raining like crazy on the weekend and they were out canvassing neighborhoods and going door to door and talking about the potential value of Proposition K. When I would hear those stories, it was never about Kevin somewhere up, I don't know, protected and out of the elements. No, Kevin rolled up his sleeves. He was invested in that tremendously. And at least from my perspective, almost a cheerleader, almost a band leader for Proposition K. Again, credit going to many people, but I think Kevin really helped lead that effort. The last thing I would share is Kevin's use of the word brilliant. It's not a word that's used very frequently anymore, but I will tell you that occasionally Dr. Kevin Holt would use that word. And when he did, if you were one of the individuals he was referring to, that was a great moment. I know that he used that word with me once or twice in the years that we worked together, and I can tell you how it made me feel, because Kevin was someone to look up to, because Kevin was visionary, because Kevin had tremendous work ethic. For that person to tell you something you did, something you thought of, something you suggested was brilliant, those were days that you remember, conversations that you would remember. I know I certainly have and do. Next, I would like to introduce, for some additional commentary about Dr. Holt, I'd like to introduce San Marcos City Council member and former SMUSD board member, Randy Walton.
All right. So I first met Kevin Holt in 2008 after I had just been elected to the governing board of San Marcos Unified School District. And to be honest, I'm not sure that I'd ever met a superintendent of school before. And I certainly had no idea what they did all day. So I went to Kevin's office and we met in his conference room, and he dropped in front of me this giant 3-ring binder like this thick, and it said school board manual or something, and he laughed. Because it was like 1,000 pages long, and I think he knew that I would never read it and that he had never read it. And for the next hour and a half, we talked about our backgrounds, our families. We talked about the big issues facing San Marcos Unified. And I can remember leaving that meeting thinking, this guy is cool. Now, in the months and years that followed that meeting, I learned a lot about the business of education. I learned that education was complicated, sometimes risky, frequently emotional, occasionally tragic, and sometimes really, really fun. And I learned that being a superintendent is incredibly difficult work, and that Kevin Holt was born to do it. Many in this room remember the years 2008 through 2010. Budgets needed to be cut, Several schools were beyond capacity, and because San Marcos continued to grow as a city, the future growth looked daunting. Kevin had taken over only a year or two before from a previous superintendency that ended in controversy. And the truth is, things were not settled here in San Marcos Unified, and I would argue that we were even a school district in the midst of an identity crisis. So for me, trying to understand all of this stuff was like taking a sip of water from a fire hose. But looking back, I think that Kevin saw clearly the potential, formulated his own plan, and through the sheer force of his incredible personality, captained our ship through some rough waters to excellence. You see, when Kevin took over this district, you recall it was the middle of the Great Recession, and state funding was cut dramatically, and San Marcos Unified had to make deep cuts. It was brutal. There was so much concern, we moved our school board meetings to the Mission Hills Theater just so we could handle the crowds of displeased employees and parents. And in addition to asking teachers to take furlough days for which they wouldn't be paid, and eliminating a few dozen full-time positions, not to mention scores of instructional aides, and cutting small programs, it was a very, very difficult time. And how do you get through difficult times like that without irreparably harming school culture and morale, relationships and trust? Kevin spent an enormous amount of time meeting with stakeholders like SMEA, meeting with PTOs and concerned parents, educating anyone who would listen about the cold, hard realities of the moment and how we would get through this together and emerge stronger. I was present at these meetings, and many in this room know Kevin had this incredible ability to connect with people, to understand and sympathize, to be frank and honest, and to build trust. Now, I don't want to make it sound like that period was one great big group hug. It wasn't. But there is no question that but for the sheer force of Kevin's personality and the real connections that he made with people, getting through those years would have been far more damaging. It's also worth noting that during those terrible years of budget, early on, every one of our schools saw their test scores rise. And it was during those years that I came to the conclusion that I was in the presence of a truly gifted leader. Many of you in this room know the years that followed. Kevin turned his attention to dealing with another brutal school district reality, and that was we needed more schools and to modernize or rebuild the old ones that were inadequate for their times. So in 2010, while people were still hurting from the recession, we decided to ask local voters to pass a general obligation bond and tax themselves for the next several decades so we could raise $287 million to rebuild and modernize schools, including the one that we're in right now. A lot of people thought it was too soon, and if you followed the politics of the day, school bonds didn't pass that frequently in San Diego County. But Kevin said that the time was now, and Proposition K was born. Now, I've been involved in a lot of local campaigns in the last 20 years, and when I think back about the campaign to pass Proposition K, all I can think about is how much fun it was. We, of course, hired professional help to help lead the campaign, but it was incredible and inspiring about how our community came together during that period to pass this bond. And I see many faces in this room that worked really hard during that time. But the biggest champion and cheerleader of that campaign was Kevin Holt. Kevin giving speeches, Kevin making campaign decisions, Kevin delivering pizzas to the phone bank, Kevin waving campaign signs. The guy was everywhere at all times, and on election night when it was clear that Prop K was going to pass handily, Kevin partied. We all did. But think about this. This is pretty incredible. Using Prop K funds and other funds, Kevin Holt had a hand in the rebuild or modernization of Julian Elementary, San Marcos Elementary, San Marcos High School, this glorious place we are right now, Double Peak School, La Mirada Academy, La Costa Meadows, and the snack bar bathroom building on the Mission Hills football field. And that's sort of an inside joke because you would not believe the debate we had over that bathroom building and how expensive it was. I mean, most superintendents, this is the truth, most superintendents won't build any schools during their tenure, maybe 1, 2 if it's busy. I think that Kevin Holt was engaged in the construction of 6. So you ask, well, how did Kevin Holt do this? Well, first, the man was inexhaustible. He apparently got up at 4 a.m. every morning and first took care of his menagerie of animals at home, which was like 10 dogs and alpacas and horses, and I'm not kidding. And then he would get in his car at dark and drive to the gym, work out, shower, come to San Marcos Unified and oversee a district of 20,000 kids and 2,000 employees and 19 schools, and then at the end of the day, usually be required at some school or educational event at night. I mean, did I mention that being the superintendent of a school district like this is an incredibly demanding job? It is. But Kevin, he loved his work. I mean, I have a memory, this is true, I have a memory of watching Kevin in action and being envious and thinking to myself, here is a person who truly loves what he does. And not a lot of us can say that. And I witnessed that. And he was an idea factory. I can't tell you how many times he would call and say, hey, Rand, what do you think about this? Or he with the board would have to kind of pull him back and say, Kevin, I'm not sure we can do that. The guy was so enthusiastic and he always wanted to go big. Kevin also loved people, and people loved him. Well, he demanded excellence. He had this giant, loving personality that he shared with everybody. When we would visit campuses as a board and do tours, Kevin would usually make a grand entrance, sometimes a little bit late, embrace whoever was working the front desk, then make the rounds of the staff. He knew the first names of almost everybody, including the janitors and the clerical staff. And he would be nothing but encouraging to the teachers that we would visit along the way. It sounds strange, but Kevin was sort of like a celebrity if you could be one as a superintendent, right? And he looked and dressed the part, right? The man was, you've probably seen it up there, the man was always impeccably dressed. You know, it's funny. Every year as a board, we have to evaluate the performance of the superintendent. And this is probably confidential stuff, but there's one question that says, what kind of appearance does the superintendent make to the public? Well, you know, this was Kevin Holt. So one year we said, Kevin Holt is the best dressed superintendent in the county. But we had to do it next year. You couldn't just give him the same rating. So we said, for real, Kevin Holt is the best dressed superintendent in Southern California. And then it was the state. And by the time Kevin done, no joke, he was the best dressed superintendent in the universe. But most important of all, Kevin loved kids. Everyone here knows, in this gym knows, that Kevin's heart was as big as his personality. And he believed, and he would say this, I'm quoting him, every child deserves to learn every day. And you all know that San Marcos Unified is, we're not that ethnically diverse, right? We have two big groups. We have We have white kids and Hispanic kids, but socioeconomically, we're very diverse. We have groups of students that are fortunate to come from families that have the means and the resources to give their child every single advantage. And we have large groups of students who do not have those same advantages. And while I think Kevin wanted every student to reach their God-given potential, it was those without the advantages that I think he cared a little more about. He spent so much time thinking about equity and justice and fairness, and constantly thinking about how we as a district can narrow the achievement gap. It was so important to him that struggling students got support, and that those who misbehave, or as Kevin would say, were naughty, were given second chances and third chances. In the final analysis, Kevin Holt loved this school district, and I think if he were here today hearing this, he would agree that it loved him back. And if he were here today, Andy, he would be your biggest supporter, and he would want you to succeed. The truth is, we all loved Kevin. That's why we're here today. He was an extraordinary person with extraordinary gifts who touched the lives of hundreds, if not thousands, of people in this school district, and no doubt beyond. And while his accomplishments are legendary and his legacy secure, it's the humanity of Kevin Holt that we're going to remember the most. You know, Maya Angelou famously said, "People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." And by that measure, Kevin Holt is going to be remembered for a very, very long time.
So much has been shared about Kevin's leading the district, the accomplishments of the district during his time as superintendent. But we've also known that Kevin was exceedingly complex. I think Randy talked about that in many ways, and talked about relationships, very important to Kevin. I think, you know, I work in human resources, and you'll hear that as a part of an answer frequently about leadership style. Relationships are important. For Kevin, he lived that. He didn't just say that, he lived that every day. And there were, I think, many benefits to the way Kevin led. And when it comes to his ability to develop deep and real relationships, when Randy talks about him going to school sites and him knowing first names and hugging, that's true. That happened. And that, I think, was inspiring. I think it made every employee that had that relationship, and students as well, want to please, want in some way impress Kevin. But there was also this playful side of Kevin that we all, I think, enjoyed. And there was a balance there. And while people, I think, really wanted to work hard for him, they enjoyed playing with him and teasing him and knowing that he was safe to do that with. So in 2015, there was kind of a grassroots, organic effort to produce a surprise video for Kevin for Boss's Day. And so Anna Lucia Roybal at the time, in the position of communications coordinator, went around the district office and just very informally asked various departments, would you be willing just to say a few words about Kevin? And I want to show you that video because I think it is a great reminder of Kevin's ability to really connect with anyone. It didn't matter what you did for the district. Kevin valued that. He valued you. He valued your contribution. So I apologize to the members that are up here on the stage, but if we could sort of adjourn over to those seats, that will give you a better view of what is that? The screen.
Hello? Yeah, I'm just getting some coffee. Today's Boss's Day? Really? Boss's Day, yeah, that is a big deal. Yeah, I know, you walk that, you do, you walk that fine line of sucking up and actually, like, you know, appreciating your boss.
Hey Kevin, today's Boss's Day, and we've been having a really hard time trying to figure out what to do for you.
You're such a dynamic boss, we had to think of something extra special just for you.
And it had to be extra special because you're an extra special kind of boss.
So what's more special than having all of us describe you in one word?
Kitty, who do you think they're talking about?
Kevin.
Kevin.
I mean, there's a lot of Kevins in the district.
There is a lot.
Who? I mean, does she mean like D.O. or could it be school sites, Kevin?
You mean Special K? K-Dog?
Special K?
Special
I like
Special
that.
K. Oh yeah, he's awesome. Love that guy. He's very charismatic.
Ah, that's deep.
Impactful.
Positive.
Carrie.
Vivacious.
Supportive.
Always on the move.
Visionary. Hot.
Peripatetic.
Energetic.
Compassionate. Incorrigible.
Inspirational.
On point.
Quality.
Welcoming.
Lovable.
Energetic.
Dancer.
Fashionable. Hey Kevin, check out my shoes.
Energetic.
Happy. Fun.
Dynamic.
Motivating.
Innovative.
Chipper.
Friendly.
Fun-loving. Joyful. Energetic.
Charming.
Hold on.
Compassionate.
She took mine.
I would say passionate.
Dynamic.
Hilarious.
Avant-garde.
Innovative.
Happy.
The bee's knees.
Personable. Energized.
Bubbly.
Driven.
Splendid.
Impressive.
Generous.
Open-minded.
Fabulous.
Wait, I have one more. He's accepting.
You are the most innovative leader that I think any of us have ever worked for. So with that said, happy Boss's Day.
Happy Boss's Day.
Happy Boss's Day.
Please don't fire us. Just has attitude. It's like, you know, Special K. Deal with that. Before I invite you back, one second, two more things, since I promised I'd only ask you to move twice. When you think about great leaders, great individuals that impact an organization, a community, I think one of the ways you evaluate that is legacy. If somebody truly has had an impact on others, then doesn't that normally then carry on into the future? And for sure, that is true for Kevin in many ways. There was a reference to Proposition K and this building and many others. There are leaders in this district who were selected by Kevin, promoted by Kevin. Some are leaders now in even higher positions in other districts, but came back to honor him. And I think when you think about legacy in a way that would be important to Kevin, I think it would probably need to in some way relate to students, because that was so much of his core. When you talk about him getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and doing a million things before he even got to work, that's somebody that's very motivated. And I think something that really motivated Kevin was seeing students succeed. So I would like to talk about, or actually I would like to invite someone else to talk about a portion of Kevin's legacy moving forward. So I'd like to invite up the Executive Director of the San Marcos Promise, Lisa Stout.
Good afternoon. it's heartwarming to see all of you here today. Kevin was a dear friend, and I'm deeply honored to speak in his memory. When I first met Kevin, I remember being in awe of his ability both to light up a room and very genuinely take control of and work a crowd. And that heart of gold we all know so well. Every one of us here had a relationship with Kevin on some level, and each of us has our own memories. So I want you to think for a second how you felt after you talked or had any interaction with Kevin. And I'll bet it brings a smile to your face and fills your heart with joy. Kevin loved his job, loved San Marcos Unified School District and its staff, loved our community, but most importantly, as we've heard multiple times, loved our students and always had their best interests at the forefront of his vision. In 2014, Kevin, along with Randy Walton, Sharon Jenkins, and John Forst, started a nonprofit education foundation, the San Marcos Promise. I was a high school counselor at San Marcos High School, actually, at that time. But about 3 years ago, Kevin asked me to step into the role of executive director for the foundation. And I remember meeting with him at that point, and we were talking about how excited we were with the direction San Marcos Promise was headed, and dreaming big about what was yet to come. And something he said that day stuck with me. He said, "Lise, we're not just going to be in the parade, we're going to lead the parade." And that proverbial parade he spoke about was all of us: education, businesses, parents, and community leaders coming together in an effort to support these amazing young people in our school district. And when I think about the words associated with the parade, exuberance, excitement, fun, celebration, togetherness, and of course dancing, well, those are all things Kevin. So now whenever I see a parade, whether it's Junkanoo in the Bahamas, Second Line in New Orleans, or the famed Rose Bowl Parade, of course I think of Kevin. And I liken taking the leadership of a parade to that of being a catalyst. Someone who, through their passion, drive, and desire to bring change, is instrumental in guiding a movement and driving it forward with all of their heart. This epitomizes Kevin's leadership in San Marcos Unified. As superintendent, he was always at the front of the parade, leading and dancing as we enthusiastically moved forward toward a common cause. And he also had a way of encouraging and empowering others to be leaders in their own parades. And people always wanted to step in to join Kevin's parade. In fact, I'm sure all of us here today have been part of his parade at one point or another, whether it was campaigning for Prop K to build and modernize our schools, bringing in new and innovative programs throughout the district, or starting our nonprofit foundation, the San Marcos Promise. Kevin was very much a visionary. His efforts knew no bounds. He was innovative, fearless in taking risks, and found ways to make things happen. I was trying to think of the perfect word to describe this, and I couldn't think of anything, so one came to mind in a dream, and that word is faction. Kevin took faction. He quickly took thought into action where one immediately just became the next. And one might call that impulsive, but no, there was thought. He just knew what was best for kids. So anytime he heard about a great opportunity for our students, he'd immediately want that thing in San Marcos Unified, and he'd figure out a way to make it happen now. My earliest memories of Kevin come from my years working as a high school counselor. And these are just some of the examples of the seeds that he planted, but there are endless more. And most importantly, these are part of his lasting legacy in San Marcos Unified. In 2007, Kevin started the PACE Promise with Cal State San Marcos. This groundbreaking partnership guaranteed college admission to any of our San Marcos Unified graduates who met the minimum Cal State entrance requirements. This admissions guarantee not only opened the doors of higher education to thousands of students, but still exists today and is now expanded to over 10 surrounding school districts. The relationship he forged with the Leach-Tag Foundation through the naming of Julianne Leach-Tag Elementary School brought in $6 million of funding to support PACE scholarships that made college dreams possible for students between 2007 and 2018. Kevin brought in a unique program called Simon Scholars, which is designed to help students facing difficult life and economic circumstances to excel academically and socially so they can succeed and complete a college degree and pursue a meaningful career. And about 6 years ago, I took a trip to Denver with Kevin and some other district leaders, and we were going to meet with the Denver Schools Foundation. And we were there to learn about the supports that they were providing in their area. And on that trip, we visited a few high schools, and these high schools had what were called future centers. And to be honest, I thought, well, we already have those. We have college and career centers. But we all know Kevin. He dreamed bigger and always liked to step things up a few notches. So we started talking about this concept of a future center. And he envisioned something much different from what we saw in Denver. Kevin envisioned a one-stop shop for all future planning, a central hub where we could establish and grow partnerships with local companies to bring in supports and resources for our students. The space would look future forward with upgraded technology and furnishings, a room unlike anything else students would see on a school campus. When students walk into the future centers, Kevin wanted them to feel transformed into adulthood with a sense of excitement about their possible future selves. And Kevin said, oh, we will have future centers in San Marcos one day. And I'm so proud to say that Kevin's vision is coming to fruition. 3 future centers, San Marcos High School, Mission Hills High School, and Twin Oaks High School. Each with their own unique look and feel, will be ready to open sometime early second semester. Sorry. And on behalf of all of us at the San Marcos Promise, we are honored to announce that the Mission Hills High School Future Center will be named the Dr. Kevin Holt Future Center. We are so proud to carry on his legacy and his parade, to continue his promise and vision of bringing resources and opportunities to positively impact the futures of the students in our community for countless years to come. We love you, Kevin.
Well, I definitely hope nobody, when they came here, thought that we promised that there would be no tears, because we did not promise that. But thank you, Lisa, for the work that's been going on to really focus on students first, but to find a way to include Kevin in that, because Kevin would have wanted that, and I think Kevin would have been very proud to be associated with the San Marcos Promise, continuing on for decades to come. So thank you for your work, for the work of the board of the San Marcos Promise to include Kevin and honor him in this way. In 2017, Kevin decided that it was time to retire, and that was difficult, I would say, for many people. Certainly it was difficult for me, because I remember when it was announced that I would be leaving Temecula Valley to come here as assistant superintendent, another superintendent, different district, also Riverside County, called me unsolicited and said, I just want you to know, you are going to now work for the best superintendent in this state. And keep in mind, the person that called me was a seated superintendent and an experienced one. And although I had never worked with Kevin, I really only met him through the interview process. I knew the person that was calling me and telling me that was right. And it was difficult to hear that he was choosing to retire, but I understood, and certainly supported that. But I certainly did not want him to see, I did not want to see him go, nor did really anybody. And so when it was time to honor Kevin at a board meeting in June of 2017, we again wanted to put together another tribute to him to show publicly, and we wanted to share that with you now. This is the video tribute presented to Dr. Holt in June of 2017 when he was making his final comments before retiring as our superintendent.
Thank you for showing all the other districts in the state of California how it's done. Thank you for making San Marcos Unified School District the place to be. We are so grateful to you for bringing us your vision, your dreams, your passion, your irreverence and audacity, and most of all, your joy. We are forever grateful to you. We love you, and we want you to have a spectacular retirement. But don't just take my word for it. Lots of other people have things to tell you.
The first word that comes to mind when I think about Kevin is the word joy. He is so much fun to be around. He's infectious. He lights up every room that he walks into.
People nowadays say San Marcos Unified is one of the finest districts in the state of California, and they weren't saying that 10 years ago. There's a lot of reasons for that. There's a lot of people who've been involved in the transformation. There's been a lot of growth in the district, but I've said that if any one person were to get credit for that, it would be Kevin Holt.
As a leader, Kevin's goal has always been equity. He wants all students to have the opportunity to excel and to achieve whatever that means for each individual and wherever they come from.
When you walked on campus with him, when he knew about people and he knew things about their personal life or what their challenges were, their job at that moment, he already knew about that before he walked up to that person, and it was kind of beautiful to see him interact with all of our staff, and he did it really well with students too.
I'll give you an example about how important relationships are to Dr. Holt. One example is his plea to all staff everywhere in the district to just pick one student to connect with, to know, and to support. And collectively, that means a lot of difference in a lot of lives.
So here's what I have learned from you, Kevin Holt. I have learned that dancers and dreamers boldly envision realities that not many others can see, that movers and shakers actually bring opportunities, and that if you're willing to work hard and with lots of determination, you can make those visions into realities. And that, Kevin Holt, is what I consider your legacy.
I'll miss you, Kevin!
I'd say one thing that I've learned from you is trust, and that to get trust, you need to give trust, and the fact that you've entrusted me and us with the leadership of Woodland Park is just very encouraging, so I'm just so grateful for that.
Working for you has been a true pleasure. You were always extremely supportive, you made me laugh, you are genuine.
We really are going to miss you. We appreciate everything that you've done for our school and the community of San Marcos.
Happy retirement, Kevin!
I know you took a chance on me when you brought me here 4 years ago, and for that, I'll always be forever grateful.
I feel that I have built my career entirely on your support. So thank you for everything that you have done.
I don't think I'd be where I am today or would have taken the risk to become an administrator in our district if I didn't know that you really believed in me.
Probably never forget when it was pouring rain for the 4 weeks when we were going around the neighborhoods for Proposition K. I think it was back in 2010. You were right there with us as, we had 60 kids putting mailers in people's mailboxes and walking the neighborhoods, and you were right there alongside of us. And that's the type of guy you are. You're very humble.
You're not afraid to set these crazy, high, seemingly unachievable goals and then actually make it happen.
You have been supportive in cabinet, you've been supportive in my office, you've been supportive with my families, and you are so going to be missed. I know you're going to go on to bigger and better things, and you're going to enjoy those grandkids, and you're going to have a great life, but I'm sad today because I'm going to miss you.
Steve and I would like you to know that we had a wonderful time working with you during your superintendency.
We will miss you, Kevin!
You touched everybody's life, from students, employees, support staff, administrators.
You really had the vision for rebuilding San Marcos and rebuilding our other schools that needed it. And look at the last lasting effect that that will have for all of our students. They get to celebrate in a learning environment that's appropriate for the 21st century.
Thank you so much for everything. Your leadership, your friendship, and your mentoring has meant so much to me.
I remember the first day that I was hired and sat with you in your office. You were just right away had a sense of warmth and love, and I felt that throughout my career with you.
Enjoy that wonderful house you have, and thank you for your generous heart for the students.
Happy retirement, Dr. Holt.
You had such a strong vision, a vision for our district, and you did an amazing job moving us towards equity and using that lens when we are discussing programs or materials for students.
We'll miss you, Kevin.
As educators, we always think about the legacy that we leave, and the legacy that you will leave with me is just your passion to the whole community for wanting to see San Marcos as that community that has preschool through graduate.
The hope is that we will continue your legacy, so it will be like you haven't even left us.
Your leadership and vision will be visible in this community for generations to come.
Happy retirement, Kevin.
As a mentor, as a friend, someone I look up to professionally and personally, I just appreciate all of your wisdom and advice you've given me over the years.
One of my favorite quotes is, "Let us be grateful for the people who make us happy, for they are the charming gardeners that make our souls blossom." And that's you. You've made my soul blossom. You've made unreachable amounts blossom. Children, teachers, administrators, your touch is far-reaching.
We'll miss you, Kevin.
Most of my career as a principal, Kevin's been my superintendent, so it feels like a whole new world without him here. To have his laughter and his sense of humor and his dedication to our kids.
Thank you so much for allowing Adina and I to get these positions when you gave them to us. It was a wonderful choice that you made.
We really thank you for all your support of our EdTech efforts in the district and all the support for everything happening in the district related to EdTech.
But I also want to thank you for making me a better educator and making choices and change for me that are difficult, but you encouraged me the whole way, and I will never forget that.
I follow you on Facebook and Twitter, so keep on close up.
It makes me sad to think this day has come, but it has, and I'm a little bit jealous. I'm just letting you know.
I remember when you first got here, started with HR and then made your way to the top. Always looked out for me, and my family, and I appreciate everything you've done for me.
And thank you for hiring me. You were the best superintendent ever. And I'm really sad I can't work with you a lot longer, but you've meant the world to me also. Wish I could have spent as many years as Puddle has. Congratulations, happy retirement.
Thanks for putting us together with somebody I can finally work with.
High five.
Kevin, these are the top 4 reasons why we love you.
You treated everybody equally, and that is an admirable thing.
Your sense of style. You constantly raise the bar for us in the superintendent's office to make sure that we shine.
Even though you drove us crazy sometimes, you always let us know you loved us.
And the number one reason why I love you, or we all love you, is because of your friendship. It's a very rare thing when an employee can call her boss her friend, and I so appreciated that about you.
You have been an inspirational leader, and we just hope that we can live up to your legacy. We love you, Kevin.
Love you, Kevin.
We wanted to make sure towards the end, when you get a chance to mingle, because there will definitely be mingling time, that you get a chance to see some of the renderings that were broadcast above for the Future Center that will be dedicated to Dr. Holt. What I'd like to do now is introduce Kevin's niece, the Director of Elementary Education in Alvord Unified School District, Dr. Emily DeVore.
Good evening, San Marcos Board President Carlson, Superintendent Johnson, members of the board, members of the audience, and friends and family of Dr. Kevin Holt. Kevin Holt was first introduced to me in the fall of 1975. At that time, Kevin was in his first year of college at Cal State Long Beach after graduating from Millikan High School earlier that year, with his eyes towards being an educator. With the delight of a young person, I watched and admired Kevin as he moved through his educational journey as a teacher's aide, a teacher, an administrator, and ending his successful educational career as the superintendent of San Marcos Unified School District. Over the decades, I've had many conversations with him about his passion for teaching, learning, and public education. Through these years of admiration, I myself followed my own journey of education as a teacher's aide. Thank you. Thank you. As a teacher's aide, a teacher, an administrator, and now the Director of Elementary Education in a nearby district, with hopes to continue my career with the same leadership qualities of Dr. Holt. Recently, I was asked what I would want to see in a person obtaining a district management position. It was easy for me to include the admirable qualities of Kevin on the top of my list. I want a leader who is nurturing, concerned about all members of the district community, genuine, and celebrates the accomplishments of others as passionately as their own. Those who knew Kevin, knew him as a leader, knew that these qualities only named a few. In addition to these professional qualities, Kevin deeply loved his family. Danny, Taylor, and Mallory all hold so many positive qualities of their father. And I know firsthand how proud he is of each and every one of them. Kevin's siblings, Monty, Kathleen, and Tracy, carry in their hearts Kevin every day and are so proud of their baby brother. Betty Holt, Kevin's mother, would always share with me about Kevin's work accomplishments and told me how he saw me following his same professional path. While I share these names of personal family members, I know how much his professional family also meant to him. He regularly, often, and a lot boasted about his San Marcos community. He was so proud of the district and San Diego County leadership in all. Just in the last few weeks, I have had random opportunities to visit with current Fallbrook Union Elementary School District Superintendent Candy Singh and former Superintendent of Carlsbad Unified School District Suzette Lovely. They have both shared with me the sentiments of leadership that I have shared today, and both agree that Kevin is ever so present here and will be forever. As educational leaders continue to simply attempt to be more like Superintendent Holt. At the beginning of my time, I shared that I met Kevin in 1975, and I've shared the impact he has made on my life and the life of others, both professionally and personally. I share this by telling you that Dr. Kevin Holt is a beloved leader who I admire deeply. But above all else, he's my Uncle Kevin. My Uncle Kevin is a treasured part of my professional and personal journey. And I am deeply grateful for the opportunity to share with you this afternoon what he means to me. On behalf of my family here today and those that are not able to join us, I wish to formally thank each one of you for honoring his life. I know how much he loves every bit of the attention, and he is ever so present, loving each one of us and celebrating right alongside of us today and every day. Excuse me. Thank you to all members of the San Marcos Unified School District community for loving Betty Holt's son, my Uncle Tracy's brother, my mother Kathleen's brother, Tom's life partner, my cousin's father, and my dear Uncle Kevin. For this, San Marcos Unified is forever part of our family. We embrace you with appreciation, respect, and our deepest love and gratitude. Thank you all. And in Kevin Holt's honor, I believe we should continue to laugh, ironically dance, and celebrate for all that he means to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. I would like to introduce now our final speaker of the evening, Kevin's partner, Tom Harney.
First, I'd like to say thanks to all of you guys for being here. I mean, the tributes, the Future Center, all of it. I mean, Kevin just would be so proud. And thank you to San Marcos School District for putting this all together. I mean, he would have loved it. You know, it was about him, and there was music, and it doesn't get any better than that, really. On a personal note, Andy, Dana, and Henry, you've worked so hard in putting all this together. Our family is really grateful. Family. 2 of our granddaughters are out there, Isabel and Julie, and who is not here, our older son, Danny, and his wife, Laura, but they're here in spirit, so hello. Anyway, the years that Kevin spent at San Marcos were his finest. He felt a calling to be here at that time in his life. He'd come home, and he'd tell me, I'm making a difference. You see, that was his life's passion, to make a difference in someone's life for the better. Whether it was walking in the room all decked out, or being part of a collaborative issue, he wanted to create change. He dreamed that together we could impact the lives of students through compassion and caring. One of his fondest programs, of Just Pick One, really encapsulates how he thought administrators and district personnel could have positive impact on the lives of students. Because if you were with Kevin, you were the one. If you were an underserved student, he wanted you to feel special and make you feel as if you were the best and most important. If you were a colleague, he wanted your opinion because you knew the best. If you were his admin, Dana, you were the best. When he needed a compassionate and loyal heart, you were there. I love you for that. If you were a friend, he wanted to know that was what was special going on in your life. And if you were a friggin' holiday, it had to be special and over the top. If you were his family, you knew you were in for one of the over-the-top adventures. One we most recently had was at the wedding of our daughter, Mallory, and Pete, which was thankfully 1 month before he passed. Since it was at our house, I knew in advance I was in for a stressful journey because I had a lot of them. And Kevin was a perfectionist, to say the least, and he had to touch every blade of grass, every flower on the property. He worked the entire night before without sleep because Mallory's day, you see, was the one. He had waited for it, and it needed to be perfect. It was a magical day that transformed into what we now know are the fondest memories of our last family gathering. As for me, I'm grateful that 29 plus years ago, his decision to just pick one was me as his partner. My life was forever transformed for the better. So today, I throw out the challenge to all of you to just pick one, either in the district or in your very own lives. Choose one that you can make a difference in their journey and a tribute to Kevin for all he stood for, cared for, and dreamed for, in hopes of making things better for all of us, and most especially the San Marcos community that he loved and he was so proud to serve. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tom. As we conclude or begin to conclude our time together this evening, a couple things I'd like you to know. Some of you had the distinct honor of being in Kevin's presence when he would go on some kind of like a binge eating, like a snack, like a maniacal kind of consumption of candy. And for someone who was always so trim, so fit, I really never knew where he put it. He had several favorites. Two of his favorites were hot tamales and Good and Plenty. After you entered the gym this afternoon, some of the HR team members have put out baskets of both kinds. And whether you are a snacker or not, I would encourage you to take a box and put it in your office, put it in your classroom, put it in your den, put it in your living room, anywhere to remind you of Kevin, to remind you of this day. I'd also like to say that we are in no way asking you to rush out of here. Some of you haven't seen each other in a while, and I would say, in my opinion, that can be a part of the healing process, because we were all shocked when we learned that Kevin passed so suddenly. I always pictured Kevin as somebody that was going to take up new and likely dangerous activities and hobbies, at 90, and start taking up cigar smoking or something at 95. So it was truly a shock when he passed. And so I would say use this as an opportunity before you leave today. Interact with others. Kevin would love that. Kevin would be so happy to watch that happen. And I'd encourage you, share your stories with each other about Kevin, your favorite memories. I think that would be a great way to end your time here today, and also connect with others, and in some ways connect with Kevin. Also, please, before you go, I hope you have noticed, there are various posters of Kevin, some down here, most of them up top. There are markers next to them, and I would ask, if you feel comfortable, if you feel so moved, to please write on them, not on his face, okay? Mike Sawyer, I know you were thinking that, don't do it. But a message of any kind, just signing it, a message to sort of let Kevin know that you were here, that you made time to be here. And I want you to know that at the conclusion of today's gathering, all of these will be distributed to Kevin's family, so that they can remember Kevin, and that you were here to share this day and this occasion with them. I do want to thank everybody that's here. Thank you. We're all busy. We all have things to do. But we all, if you're here, you felt like you had to be here. I definitely had people contact me and say, you just tell me when and where. I don't have a choice. I feel compelled. I need to be here. Well, thank you, because you made the commitment to be here, and that is much appreciated. Thank you to Kevin's family. So many of them, although not all, as Tom pointed out, but so many are here, and thank you. For some of you, you traveled to be here, and so thank you. Thank you to all of our guest speakers. Definitely much appreciated. Also, thank you to the generous support of individuals and Mission Federal Credit Union, because together, that is what financed the things that we've been doing today. I'd like to also thank Samay Grayus, our system support technician, for all of his technological assistance today. I truly could not have done it without you. I'd like to thank Scott Campbell, San Marcos High School Film Academy teacher, for serving as our videographer. I'd like to thank the San Marcos High School custodial crew. They are likely not in the room, but will be definitely of a support to us later this evening. I'd like to thank the superintendent's office for their support and the HR team. You're frequently behind the scenes, but your impact is felt every time you choose to invest and honor our district. So with that said, it has been a pleasure being with you, and it is not time for you to leave. I'm going to conclude this time now, but if you please would feel free to stay, talk, come down here if you would like, interact with us, interact with each other. Thank you again for being here, and good evening. Thank you, guys.
I believe that.